now a provision for acceptance of digitally signed invoices, as well as preservation of records in the electronic form. Now, this is a very huge change. Logistically, procedurally, it impacts everybody because now there is no need to maintain physical records, registers. One can maintain them the way you are doing on the system itself. But they have put some caveats and some riders here, which to my mind look a little cumbersome. Like for instance, they say that when you preserve the records in electronic form, every page needs to be digitally signed. Now, I do not know how this will work because they are going to prescribe some more guidelines and some more procedures in this regard. But that, to my mind, will be a little cumbersome. But then maybe they want to have some safeguards. Because people should not manipulate the records afterward and say, well, it doesn't take much to nowadays change one entry somewhere and say this was my record. So that is why they are putting all these conditions. But it's a good step towards removing paper from all this procedure. But they have a problem that while goods are being transported in trucks, what do you do? Because then the truck driver must carry an invoice. So, because somebody must stop him and say, where is your invoice? Now he can't say, well, this is my app and this is my and please see. So that doesn't work. So they have put here that a transporter of goods needs to carry a self-attested hard copy of the invoice during transportation. Now, because that's the way our, on a practical level, it cannot work otherwise. I don't know how many of you have seen this Yes Minister or Yes Prime Minister as a serial. It used to come on the BBC, and it's a very good satire and comedy on the bureaucracy in UK, which is very similar to our bureaucracy. So there, one of those episodes used to be that the minister says, we must reduce paperwork here. Look at this, our offices all cluttered up and piled up with files and documents, this, that. We must have a system of reducing paperwork. So the secretary, who is like, the minister is a well-meaning person, the secretary is a wily bureaucrat. So Sir Humphrey, he says, of course, no doubt we should do this. So he implements a policy and says, all right, we remove all the past paper prior to this particular period. And then suddenly, minister says, what happens if we ever need to see some of all those past records? He said, don't worry, I'm making 2 copies of all the records, keeping them somewhere. So it's something like this here, that you have a provision for saying electronic records, and suddenly the bureaucrat realizes, oh my God, what will happen if we have to check a truck, and then what will the transporter show? So this is where they have put this. Then there is this simple simplification of the registration process. They're saying that online registration now possible within 2 working days. Now, there is a detailed guideline which has been given here. Which says that you need not give all records which were earlier given. And first registration will be granted, and after that, post verification can be done of the premises and all that. So this is an online registration within 2 days guaranteed, and all the verification is a post verification. So in a way it's good that nobody will be waiting to start his factory for a registration to come. He can start his factory with the registration, he has a number. He can start producing, he can start clearing the goods. Verification will follow.
Sir,
Yeah.
this is for new registrations or amendment also for new place of business?
This one is for the excise side. On the excise side.
So, for example, I have to add one new premises as a first stage dealer.
Okay, as a dealer.
Yeah. Or a second stage, whether I can make it through booking days or only new excise premises only.
I think it's the same registration will continue. No? Registration is same. You're adding a premises.
Yeah, but whether I will get the premises through working days.
See, the regulations which have come talk about registration, 2 working days. To my mind, even an amendment should take less than that. Okay, so when you are now doing an online kind of edition, like you see on the EXIM side, export import policy side, the DGFT side, there you need to keep adding premises many a times, because you have one factory, you want to add one more factory. It is mere intimation. You just add it, and it gets reflected immediately. I do not know how this particular software will work now under the new thing, but I believe it should be an automatic thing that you just add it, and that will be post verification, subject to post verification. This is the way I look at it logically. But ultimately, when the software comes and when you start actually implementing it, how it will be, I do not know. That we have to wait for some time. But there is a statement of intent here that we will do it online and we will have a post verification. Now, two good amendments, which I must say are long overdue on the excise side and which affects almost everybody, is that when you are trying to take credit of duty on any input, whether as a manufacturer or as a service provider. Likewise, you are taking credit on capital goods, either as a manufacturer or as a service provider. If you need to first send it to a job worker, you have an outside job worker, you need to send the inputs to the job worker, who will then convert it into some other product, and then it comes back to me in my factory for use, for further use. Now, there is a provision which says that you can directly move it to the job worker, okay? And then from one job worker, it can go to a second job worker, second to a third job worker, no problems. As long as it comes back to you in respect of inputs within 180 days and in respect of capital goods within 2 years. So that's a good provision and a good clarification. Though I must say that it was already being done. But what used to happen was that the date of taking credit on inputs used to get deferred to the time when the inputs would come back to the factory. And you could not take it at that first instance when it reaches the job worker. It would be deferred to the point of time when the inputs will come back from the job workers into my factory as an individual. So now you can take it from the first day. Likewise, for a registered dealer is in Bombay, the supplier of goods, inputs, is in Gujarat, and the buyer of the goods is in Rajasthan. Now, the rule now clarifies that there is no need for the goods to travel to Bombay and then go to Rajasthan. So it doesn't happen that Gujarat to Bombay and Bombay to Rajasthan. No. You can move the goods directly from Gujarat to Rajasthan. The invoices must merely mention that this is the registered dealer's name, address, and it is a direct dispatch of goods. So these are good amendments aimed at reducing unnecessary movement of goods to enable compliances for a willing settlement credit or pass-through of credit. There is one nice provision which has not been talked about much in the budget speech or anywhere document, the fine print. There are so many returns which are excise under excise law which are required to be fined. And when you try to file it on the system, if your day is over, if it is delayed, at times it doesn't accept return which is belated. Now the provision says that you can file a late return at any time, an automatic penalty of 100 rupees per day, subject to a maximum of 20,000 rupees. So any return you have delayed, pay 1,500, 2,000, whatever amount is there, and immediately when you pay, then the system will accept your return also. So it's an automatic filing of return, delayed returns, on payment of nominal late filing penalties. If you see on our service tax side also we had 100 rupees per day in section 76, but there was no upper limit. So I remember one case I was telling, I'm sorry? No, earlier. Earlier, from the beginning, there was no limit on that in the provision. It was later on introduced. So that amount could swell up to a large figure. Here we have a limit here, which is automatic limit. Okay, friends, on the service tax side now, on the excise side, there is not much I have just dealt with it. On the service tax side, what are the provisions for penalty? Now, this is a simplified version. What is the, in extent where 5 years period can be invoked, the penalty can be 100% of the service tax. Where there is no suppression misstatement, 10% of the service tax. This is a simplified version I'm giving you. Same options as we had discussed on excise customs. If 30 days, within 30 days of issue of notice, if the tax and interest is paid, then the penalty reduces to 15% in the first case where there is suppression misstatement, and there is no penalty if there is no suppression misstatement. If one misses the opportunity of paying for within 30 days of the receipt of the show cause notice, then adjudication on the 30 days, penalty comes to 1/4 and 1/4 of the penalty. So it becomes 2.5% here. Now, one provision which clarifies that if the tax demand is modified in appeal, then and the amount increases, then you get an option of again complying with the same provision by paying the increased amount within 30 days. Now, what is happening on the service tax side is that there are 3 amendments which are proposed. One is Section 80, which was the omnibus provision for waiver of penalty. If reasonable cause could be shown, that has gone. So that ultimate discretion which existed with the authority or the tribunal for waiving of penalty in bona fide cases or wherever you could show a reasonable cause, that has been deleted. That's a bad step, because that was one step which was taking away the vigor of this penalty, because in bona fide disputes one could raise that. But maybe, one can say that, oh, Section 80 is gone, is very bad. But a larger debate is whether you needed Section 80 at all. Even if you don't have Section 80, or Section 80 didn't exist, it is implicit in any penal provision that if you can show that the default was bona fide and not verified, and occurred for reasons beyond your control, or there were good reasons for that default, then even otherwise on a plain reading of any penal provision, penalty should have been waived. No penalty could have been imposed in the first place. So one could say that Section 80's deletion is a bad step from the perspective of a layman, and maybe from a practical standpoint also it is a bad step. But from a very purely legal standpoint, I think it makes no difference. Section 80 was, in a way, redundant, except in cases where penalties were automatic penalties. Like, for instance, late filing of return. There is no need for mens rea. It's the rule of strict liability. So the moment you have filed late, penalty provisions come in. And there Section 80 was a good provision. But in more serious offences, Section 80 was not relevant, because that again was implicit in the section itself. So that is one amendment. Section 80 is gone. The second amendment is that there was this facility under Section 73(4)(a), where you could avoid a show cause notice by paying tax, interest and 1/4 penalty, even in cases of suppression misstatement. Now that provision also is proposed to be deleted now, with the result that there is no option available after the finance bill is passed of avoiding a notice in a service tax case if there is suppression of fraud. So the moment there is suppression of fraud, even if you are willing to pay the tax, interest and penalty, notice cannot be avoided. Notice will come. But after notice comes, then you have all the options. Now, I'm sorry.
In earlier slide,
Yeah.
there is that first case issue of show cause notice. If tax and interest is paid within 30 days of issue of show cause notice, And after order, it is 30 days of receipt of order. Will this make any difference? Issue of suppose actually what is service of a notice? That what is there in the act? So is service of notice means is it a receipt of notice or it is the date of when the
Always, these words, issue, is always relatable to the receipt. Supreme Court has held this in several cases. Even if it says the date of the show cause notice or date of the order, even then it has been held to be the date of receipt. From a practical standpoint, court says that how can you say you pass an order, keep it in your drawer, don't issue it, and time will pass. Okay, or you write there date of issue and don't actually deliver it. Again, there is so keeping these practical difficulties in mind, the Supreme Court has said in several judgments that in all such cases, it is the date of receipt by the assessee, which is the date of issue of the order or date of the order. So both the words will have the same meaning. So nothing much turn on that. You can always take it that always applies from the date of receipt of the notice or the order by you.
So,
Yeah.
this the entire realignment of the penalty is only happened because there is a writ petition pending in respect of 30% of the interest, because that itself is punitive. So, don't you think that this entire penalty which has been reduced, etc.,
Could be to allow that allow the court to pass that penal interest as all right. That maybe that could be the reason. You see, as you saw, that mandatory penalty also and mandatory pre-deposit last year, 7.5 or 10%. Question is why this reasonable amount of pre-deposit? Is for the very same reason. The minister knows you make it 20%, 25%, there will be a spate of writ petitions all over the place saying that this is totally unreasonable. It renders my right of appeal illusionary. Okay? So keeping that in mind, purposely is kept like this. But also one can imagine what will happen, say, 2 years from now. That 7.5% will become 10, 10 will become 15, then 15 will become 20. So when we meet again after 3 years, we will find mandatory pre-deposit will become 20%. Okay? And here again, as you rightly said, that the you are saying that the minister is doing all this to protect that 30% levy thing. It could be. That could be the thinking on the back of their minds. But yeah.
In case of issue of notice, nowadays we get the notices or some correspondence from department through email, and then email is not of the department but of Gmail or Yahoo or something else. What is the validity of that? Validity of
On that, guidance has been given last week that they have to stop.
Yeah. That is anyway not a service. See, the mode of service as per the law.
They can't do it.
Yeah. The mode of service. Yeah.
Dot in.
because the departmental side should be there. That is after @ departments.
Correct. See, in all the sections, in all the enactments, there is a clear provision for the method of service of a show cause notice or an order. All of them. Like under the Customs Act, it is section 153. 153. So I'll just read out what section 153 says, because any other mode of service is not service at all. So one can easily say that this is not serve. Service is always by sending it by registered post. I mean, it has reached to such an extent that the High Court here has taken an absurd view, I will say, that if you are sent by speed post, it is not service. I mean, it is registered post, but it is a speedier way of doing it. Somebody argued and somebody accepted that speed post, no, this says registered post here. So it should be registered post. Speed post is not accepted. So this Gmail and all that is all not accepted. I'm sorry.
At the same time, they have made it compulsory email ID in our STP.
That is okay. That is fine. See, they can write to you. They can write to you. They can ask you to give some information. They can ask you. See, there are so many things besides the show cause notice.
Other things are.
Yes, all. See, it's only for the service of the order or a show cause notice. Only these two events, because these two events, there is a significance attached to the date of receipt. It gets time barred, for instance, or your right of appeal starts from the date of receipt and ends from a certain date after the date of receipt. So therefore, these two documents are crucial documents, and the law provides for a specific manner of their service, and there can be no other manner of service.
So, if you go to refer the Information Technology Act, that says that any communication required to be done manually, if it is done electronically, it is valid. So, how do we correlate this?
Because if you have a provision in the Excise Act, in Customs Act, okay, saying that this is the mode of service, then this provision will prevail over the IT Act. So otherwise, like for instance, what we are saying, for an order or show cause notice, the law provides here that this is the method of service. But for other communications, there is no such requirement. So there, the IT Act is applied. Notice of hearing also can come by mail, there is no problem. One second, let me just No, I'm sorry. At least in the Customs Act, I will just check up the Excise Act also. The service provisions apply to order, show cause notice, or summons. Now, the notice here the word used is notice. One can say a notice is also a notice of hearing. So, I mean, I have not seen a case law on this, frankly, but it can be summon, I'll say summons, per PH notice, a show cause notice, and an order. 4 of them one can say reasonably that these must be served in the manner prescribed. Any other service you can ignore. If you accept it, it's fine. Then it's by admission it is accepted as served. So, okay. Any other question on this, on the penalty provisions? Okay. Now I have put 2 slides here. The new provisions under the service tax law for penalties are simplified. One is section 76 now, new section 76, and another is new section 78. Now, the earlier section 76 is now gone, will be going completely. And in place of all the provision, now you will have 2 sections only, 76 and 78. Section 80 is gone, I have already mentioned that. Section 73, 4A, that option of avoiding a show cause notice or paying amount, that is again gone. So you will have only 2 sections. 76 applies to cases where there is no suppression, misstatement or fraud. And 78 applies to cases where there is fraud, collusion or willful misstatement or suppression. Now 76 says here, where service tax has not been levied or paid or has been short levied or so and so, for any reason other than the reason of fraud, collusion or willful misstatement or suppression of facts, or contravention of any of the provisions, or the rule made under with the intent to evade payment of services. So this is that provision where the maximum penalty is 10%, capped 10%, if you in the normal course, and if you pay the entire amount of tax with interest prior to the within 30 days, then the entire 10% also goes away. So this is the provision which says that 10% also is waived if you pay the amount of tax and interest within 30 days of the service of notice. And the same provision provides for the reduced penalty of 25% if the payment is made within 30 days of the order. Now, section 78, on the other hand, applies specifically to cases where there has been short levy or short payment by reason of fraud or collusion or willful misstatement or suppression of facts. Now, in this case, the penalty is 100% as earlier, no change on that. But 2 mitigation options are available. 15% cap if you pay the tax interest within 30 days of the receipt of show cause notice, failing which you have to pay 25% of the amount of tax after the adjudication order within 30 days. Now, there is also a transitory provision, section 78B, which in effect says that all pending show cause notices will be governed by this option. So for the past period also, one can avail of this facility if within 30 days of the finance bill being passed and receiving the assent of the resident, if one opts to pay the amount of tax, interest, then one can avail of both the options, section 76 option, section 78 option. Now, you people will remember that there was this provision introduced in 2011, drawing a distinction between two kind of cases of suppression misstatement. One where the transactions are recorded in the books, another where transactions are not recorded in the specified records. Differential penalties were provided for. In the first case, it was 100% like today, and where in the recorded transaction, the penalty was capped at 50%. Now that distinction between recorded and unrecorded transactions has been now, is now sought to be removed. So now there is no distinction. If this fraud suppression misstatement, then whether or not your transactions are recorded, the penalty can be 100%. So no concession from the 100% penalty just because the transactions are now recorded in the specified records. So this is one change which has occurred. Now, what happens to this last 3 years when the law existed for drawing a distinction, and now that provision is gone? Now some benefit has obviously accrued to SSCs for the last 3 years. So they are entitled to that reduced penalty. So to save that, provide for that situation that in future, if there is any such payment required to be made, then the old law will apply for them. So that protection has been given in the transitory provision. So that means to the extent for the 3 years period when there is a case, show cause issued in future also, demanding tax by invoking the 5 years period, and you can show that the transactions are recorded transactions, then the penalties will be 50% and not 100% for those cases. That is the simplified answer to the otherwise complex penal provisions. In fact, now in all the enactments, it looks as if the penal provisions and interest provisions are more, the whole statute is full of that, and there is less on the tax and more on these other issues. Section 80, I have already said, has been deleted. So now there is no reasonable cause ground is gone. The waiver is gone. Okay, now there is one more provision which has been introduced, which is in section 73, that if the amount of tax which is not paid is a self-assessed tax, then that amount can be recovered straight away without going through the process of 73 notice. Now this provision already existed in the rules. It's not a new provision actually. It existed in Rule 6, was introduced about 2-3 years back. But what happened is, Rule 6 used to say that you can straight away recover. Whatever is the self-assessed tax, you are not paid. The government could straight away invoke the recovery provisions, section 87, and recover the amount. That is what Rule 6 said. But section 73 remained as it is. Section 73 says if non-payment is there, you must get a notice. So there are cases which I am aware of where when proceedings were initiated for recovery, even of self-assessed tax, the party took a view and they challenged the High Court saying that section 73 is a statute. That requires a notice to be issued. Rule cannot override a statute. So on this basis they said that this notice is bad, you had to give me a show cause notice, you cannot straight away recover, you have to grant me a hearing. So the law is now amended basically to take care of that anomaly. So it's not a new provision, it is merely an enabling provision to bring to effect what was the earlier intention. Self-assessed tax now can be straight away recovered. There is no need for issue of a show cause notice, no need to a hearing. Straight away they can come and recover from the bank. Okay, friends, with this the penalty issues are dealt with. There is one more amendment in the Finance Act, and that is that if there is a case involving rebate of tax or duty paid on inputs or input services used in the provision of export of services, then the appeal against the order of Commissioner Appeals will lie to the Joint Secretary, Government of India, and not to the tribunal. Now, frankly, I have not seen many cases of rebate on the service tax side these days because it is hardly granted, and about 2 years back, 2012, they had amended the section to section 35EE was made applicable to service tax, but section 86 of the Finance Act remained as it is. So Delhi High Court recently had an occasion to consider whether appeal will lie to the tribunal in cases of rebate. Conceptually, all rebate cases in the excise custom law lie to the Joint Secretary, Government of India. Revision lies there, and tribunal is not empowered to entertain such cases. That is the law on the excise custom side. Same thing they wanted to introduce in service tax law 3 years back, but they did not amend section 86 properly. So this is again an amendment merely to remove a lacuna in the enactment by saying that the tribunal will have no jurisdiction to entertain cases of rebates. Delhi High Court said that they have, because section 86 was not amended, only 35EE was of the Excise Act was made applicable to the service tax law.
Yeah, just coming back to the practicality of the penalty thing, if I have 5 issues which I have been levied penalty on, and I want to pick and choose that on the first 3 issues I'll pay the penalty of 30 days, I'll pay the interest and tax in 30 days, or the penalty of 15%, and the remaining 2 issues I say I will fight and then I'll pay. Is that possible? Is it issue based in my order?
See,
or
I think it is not issue based. I think you have to, I don't see a provision here which says that, at least in service tax law I have not seen it, which says that to the extent you are admitting or you are paying, to that amount it will apply. It's not there. So you could, at one hand you can't then pick and choose. You have to either take the whole of the notice, pay the entire amount, and then the upper cap applies. See, if you pick and choose, you may choose to pay on two accounts, on 2 counts. There are 5 demands. On 2 counts you want to pay. You pay that. To that extent you have reduced your interest meter. The 30% sword you have avoided. But the upper cap of penalty, 15% or nil, depending upon where you stand, that doesn't get altered by these part payments.
on issue based?
Yeah. It has to be the full. Yeah.
Taking it a little further, say I don't pay any service tax interest penalty at the adjudication stage. I go into appeal. The appeal wipes off my service tax on say 3 issues and confirms service tax on 2 issues which was earlier admitting also. So now whether the reduced penalty is applicable when I'm not paying any service tax interest or penalty at the time of adjudication.
I think it is because the provision says that I just I think I extracted it here. 78(2), subsection 2 here, where the Commissioner appeals appellate tribunal of this court, as the case may be, modifies the service tax determined under subsection 2, then the amount of penalty payable thereon shall also stand modified accordingly, and the benefit of reduced penalty under the first proviso shall be applicable if such service tax interest and reduced penalty so payable is paid within up to 30 days from the date of receipt of the order by which such modification is made. So you get a fresh lease of life. A fresh 30 days starts after that. If whether reduce or increase is not mentioned. Modification.
Normally, the larger period is always invoked in the SCA, and then at higher levels it says that the larger period was not invoked. Then whether the penalty stands reduced.
See, why not? Because as we saw here, the at every stage of modification, you will have a right accruing to you. Okay. So if the amount of tax has been modified, this subsection 2 says modifies the service tax determined under subsection 2. So whenever it is modified, on that day you get a fresh right to have the penalties mitigated by payment of the amount of tax payable. But when a notice comes to you, in fact this is the question that Krishna was asking me also. When a notice comes to you, notice says some fraud suppression misstatement. So on that stage you either follow the procedure available here, pay up 15% of the amount and close the notice. Okay. So there you cannot enter into argument with the department that your fraud suppression allegation is wrong and therefore now you give me section 76 benefit and not 78. At that stage you cannot do this. If you want to do that, then you contest the matter, reply to the notice, let the commissioner pass an order. Okay. Then what you can do is you can pay up the amount of tax, interest, okay, based on your, because you feel the 76 applies. So according to you, tax and interest you have to pay. You pay up that amount within 30 days of notice also. Alright. And then you say that this is a case where section 76 applies and therefore no penalty should be imposed. And that can be decided by the adjudication authority. He can, because he will not close the show cause notice based on your payment. But he will then adjudicate whether 76 applies or 78 applies. So that charge you will take. So if you lose, then that amount of tax that you have paid, interest you have paid, that benefit, the full benefit is not flowing to you. But still you are preventing yourself from 30% interest rates.
And in that case, the liability to the director and officers will continue if you fight.
If the commissioner says in the adjudication that yes, you are right, 76 applies, okay, then he has to say, I am dropping the whole proceeding against everybody. But supposing he says that sorry, I don't agree with you, if this is a case of suppression, okay, and therefore 78 applies, okay, so he will say, all right, now you have not paid 15% within 30 days of the show cause notice. Now you have one more option, pay 25% after my order, okay, but then the penalties against the remaining people will not be set aside.
You are paying 15% at the initial stage and then you are fighting.
So then if you take that, yeah, then you can say that 78 benefit is to be given then. In fact, then where is the fight then? If you are paid, okay, you are fighting on the merits, okay, correct, yeah.
Then the liability to the director and
Yeah.
will come
Yes.
or it will
go. It will go. Because then, even if the suppression, you have paid 15%, okay? So you are entitled to the benefit of 78. So you can say the directors should be let off in any event. Yeah. Krishnan is saying that the subsection 2 option, sorry, I should come back, yeah, of the fresh right to pay applies only if there is a modification of the service tax return. So if there is no modification, then the right doesn't accrue to you. So Krishnan is saying that you must go and tell him, sir, please, या तो बढ़ा दीजिए या कम कर दीजिए. Increase by 10 rupees. There's some calculation error in the order, I admit it. I think this is not properly worded because it talks only about modification of the service tax liability. It should have said something differently.
In section 76, the mode of calculation is the paid interest basically at present. And after the amendment, it would be a 15% of the amount. Now, this is a continuing default continues. Then whether the benefit limit continues after the amendment also the default, then it would be 10% or it will be continuing calculation of the earlier amount.
No, I didn't understand this question. Sorry.
In 76, the penalty amount, which is there is as per the period as it continues, as at present, the 15% of the delayed payment.
No, the new provision doesn't say that.
Nah, but then if the default continues,
Okay.
and it goes after the amendment also, then whether what should be applied?
No, but then now there is the new section 78 or 76. 76. Here now the new section doesn't provide for the continuing
Yeah,
default.
that's why it's the question.
It's an old period.
For the whole period.
It continues, still continues.
No, see, I'll calculate like this. For the old period, today the penalty is imposed on you. So let's look at it like this. Cases where penalties have already been imposed, they are lying in appeal. Okay? They'll be covered by the old law. But today, a fresh imposition of penalty can only be in terms of this new section.
Yeah, that's why it is continuing and it is now going into the next step because the default they have not paid. Nobody has given the notice also.
So no notice has come, you are saying. It's a case where no notice has come.
Not come and it continues.
So no problem. When the notice comes, on the day of the issue of notice, whatever law is prevailing,
Yeah.
only that can be invoked for
That's
penalties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what.
You're
That
right.
would be an advantage.
Yes, yes, yes.
Big
See,
advantage.
in fact, with regard to penalties, the law is that that if you are entitled to some benefit under the old provisions, you will keep getting the same benefit. Because no amendment in future can have the effect of increasing your penal liability for the past. Because that's a constitutional bar. It's a constitutional bar. It doesn't need to be stated anywhere. So no provision, no law here can be so read so as to impose a higher penalty for a past offence. But if there is a beneficial provision, it will apply.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And it applies to criminal law, for instance. Under the criminal law, if the offence was attracting, say, 7 years imprisonment earlier,